Echo 7.
70 years old. 3 winters in a row, the same man from Tennessee came to Colorado. Walked the same trails. Knew every turn. On February 28, 2019, a security camera at the Safeway supermarket in Estes Park captured him for the last time. Orange beanie. Blue jacket. Ski goggles pushed up on his forehead. He bought something and walked out. No one ever saw him again. His car sat in the Glacier Gorge trailhead parking lot for 3 days before rangers noticed. During those 3 days, more than 2 feet of snow fell. The search lasted a week, then another one in the fall. 15 square miles combed by hand. Dogs, helicopters with thermal imaging. 50 people in the October operation alone. Nothing, no trace, no jacket, no hat, no body. Rocky Mountain National Park covers more than 415 square miles. Mountains rising to over 14,000 feet. Canyons, glaciers, forests where fallen trees lie stacked like cordwood, and a person sinks chest-deep in snow between them. Somewhere in there is James Pruitt, 6 years now. This is the first of 9 cases we will examine. 4 are officially documented with full public records. 5 others are compiled from search and rescue reports and witness statements. All 9 share one thing. People vanished in snow-covered mountains under circumstances that do not fit standard explanations. We will not tell you what to think. We will show facts. Show what was found and what was not. Show questions that still have no answers. Draw your own conclusions. Case 1. James Pruitt, Rocky Mountain National Park, February 2019. James Pruitt was 70 years old. He lived in Etowah, Tennessee, a small town of 20,000 people at the foot of the Appalachians. Pruitt was retired and came to Colorado every winter. This is an important detail. Not his first time. Not a random tourist. A man who spent 3 consecutive winters in the same place. Walked the same routes. Knew what the winter trail to Dream Lake looked like. Knew where the ice was. Where the deep snow was. Where you could cut through. On February 22nd, he arrived in the Estes Park area. Over the next 6 days, he spent time in the park making day hikes. On February 24th, another tourist photographed him on the winter trail between Nymph Lake and Dream Lake. In the photograph, Pruitt looks fit and alert. Blue jacket, red or orange hat, microspikes on his boots for walking on ice. That photograph became the last visual evidence that James Pruitt was alive. On February 28th, a Thursday, he called his family around 10 in the morning. A routine call. Nothing alarming. He did not say where he was going that day. The family did not ask. Just a normal conversation. That same day, the camera at the Safeway supermarket in Estes Park recorded him. The exact time is unknown, but it was during daylight hours. He bought something. Maybe food for a hike. Maybe something else. The purchase records were not preserved or not released. After that, James Pruitt disappeared. His car was found on March 3rd in the Glacier Gorge trailhead parking lot. This is a standard starting point for several popular routes, to Mills Lake, to the Loch, to Alberta Falls. The parking area sits at an elevation of about 9,200 feet. From there, trails climb higher, to lakes at 10,000 feet and above. Rangers noticed a car that had been sitting for several days, ran the plates, contacted the family in Tennessee. The family reported they had not heard from James since the morning of February 28th. 4 days. Between February 28th and March 3rd, more than 2 feet of snow fell in the Glacier Gorge area. The search began immediately. Here is what makes this case unusual. This was not an inexperienced tourist who underestimated the weather. This was a man who had walked these trails for 3 consecutive winters. He knew what mountain snow was like. He knew how to dress. He wore microspikes on his boots, and he vanished without a single trace. The search operation continued from March 3rd through March 9th. 15 square miles, 3 drainage basins, Glacier Gorge, Loch Vale, Glacier Creek. Search teams combed the forested areas near Bear Lake and the Glacier Gorge trailhead, the Nymph Lake area, the Chaos Creek area, Alberta Falls. Lake Haiaha. Mario's Gully, east of Lake Haiaha. The winter trails to Mills Lake and the loch. Off the packed trails, searchers sank chest-deep in snow. On March 5th, a multi-mission aircraft from the state of Colorado conducted aerial reconnaissance over Sky Pond, Lake Haiaha, Flat Top Mountain, and Bierstadt Lake. Nothing. No tracks, no clothing, no gear, no body. On March 11th, broad-scale search efforts were suspended, but the case was not closed. In the summer of 2019, when the snow melted, searches resumed. Small teams combed individual sections. The area received significant visitor traffic during the summer months. Thousands of people walked these trails. No one found anything. On October 9th, 2019, a major search operation was conducted. 50 people from the Rocky Mountain National Park Search and Rescue Team. 5 groups of 40 searchers conducted grid searches in off-trail areas, the Prospect Canyon drainage and the Glacier Gorge drainage above Jewel Lake. Search conditions: dense forest, dead and downed trees, thick willow, tall grass, mountain streams. Result: nothing. As of 2025, James Pruitt is officially listed as a missing person. His body has not been found. No belongings have been recovered. The cause of disappearance has not been determined. What does not fit the standard picture here? First, experience. This was not a novice. 3 consecutive winters in the same place. The photograph 4 days before his disappearance shows proper gear: microspikes, warm clothing, goggles. Second, absence of evidence. 2 feet of snow can hide tracks, but snow melts. The summer of 2019 was warm. The October search was conducted on dry ground. No jacket, no hat, no backpack, no boot. Third, size of the search area. 15 square miles is a lot, but it is not endless taiga. This is a national park with trails that thousands of people walk. Tens of thousands of tourists passed through these routes over the summer. Not one stumbled upon a body or gear. Fourth, character of the terrain. Glacier Gorge is not vertical cliffs where a person can fall into a crevice. It is forested slopes, lakes, trails. There are steep sections, but most of the search zone is passable terrain. Questions that remain unanswered. Where did James Pruitt go on February 28th? The family did not know his plans for that day. He left no note. He did not register with the park. Why was his car at the Glacier Gorge trailhead rather than at Bear Lake, where parking is closer to the trails to Nymph and Dream that he had walked on the 24th? What happened between the Safeway supermarket and his last known location? Where is his body if he died from hypothermia or injury? Why did no search dog pick up a trail? There are no answers to these questions. Perhaps there never will be. Official version: presumed dead as a result of a wilderness accident. Body not recovered due to difficult terrain and weather conditions. This version is possible, but it does not explain the complete absence of any trace after the snow melted. What could have been done differently? This is not an accusation. This is analysis for those who go into the mountains in winter. First, communicate your route. Pruitt did not tell his family where he was going. He left no note in his car. He did not register with the park. If searchers had known his plan for the 28th, they could have narrowed the search zone in the critical first hours. Second, emergency communication device. Pruitt was 70 years old. He hiked alone in winter in mountains at 10,000 feet. A personal locator beacon costs $200 to $300. One button press transmits coordinates to rescue services. Pruitt didn't have one. Third, regular contact. Last contact with family was the morning of the 28th. The car was found on March 3rd. 4 days. If family or friends had expected a call every evening, the alarm would have been raised on the evening of the 28th. Searches would have begun before the snowfall. Fourth, do not go alone. This is a debatable point. Many experienced hikers prefer solo trips, but statistics are clear. Solo hikes in winter mountains have significantly higher mortality rates. A partner could have called for help. A partner could have provided first aid. A partner could have simply told rescuers which direction the person went. James Pruitt was alone. Now he is a missing person. Case 2. Chad Pallansch, Rocky Mountain National Park. September 2023. Chad Pallansch was 49 years old. He lived in Fort Collins, Colorado. That is an hour's drive from Rocky Mountain National Park. He was a local. This matters. Pallansch was an experienced trail runner, not just a casual hiker. A professional mountain trail runner with years of experience. He competed in marathons. He had summited Long's Peak, the highest point in the park at 14,259 feet. More than 30 times. More than 30 times. This is not a tourist from another state who underestimated the mountains. This is a man who knew these mountains like his backyard. On September 27, 2023, Pallansch began a planned 28-mile route. This is an ambitious single-day route, even for an experienced runner. It included crossing the Continental Divide, traveling on established trails, and off-trail travel through steep talus slopes. He started from the East Inlet trailhead near the town of Grand Lake on the west side of the park. His car was left at the North Inlet trailhead, where he planned to finish by evening. Around noon on September 27th, a text message came from Pallansch. He reported he was almost at the summit of Mount Alice. That is 13,310 feet, roughly halfway along his planned route. That was the last message from Chad Pallansch. On September 28th, he was declared missing when he did not return to his car. The search operation that followed was one of the largest in the park's history. October 1st, 55 people, 38 in the field. Search zones: Boulder Grand Pass, Mount Alice, McHenry's Peak, Arrowhead, Stoneman Pass, Chief's Head Peak, Thatch Top, Powell Peak, Andrews Glacier. October 2nd. Snow, ice, and strong winds at high elevations hampered ground operations. Aerial reconnaissance continued. October 3rd. Weather improved. Helicopters took high-resolution photographs of ridgelines. October 5th. The area from Mount Alice to McHenry's Peak was closed to visitors. Purpose: to let search dogs work without distracting scents. October 7th. 77 people involved in the operation, 62 in the field. 7 teams, 3 dog teams, a drone team from the Colorado Department of Fire Prevention and Control. October 10th. Broad-scale searches suspended after 13 days. Result: nothing. Here is a list of areas that were searched: North Inlet Trail, East Inlet Trail, Mount Alice, Black Lake, Upper Glacier Gorge, Thunder Lake, Lion Lakes, Sand Beach Lake, Boulder Grand Pass, Lowell Peak, McHenry's Peak, Arrowhead, Thatch Top, Stoneman Pass, Chief's Head Peak, West Ridge of Pagoda, Andrews Glacier, Upper Chaos Canyon, Tyndall Glacier. This is virtually the entire western and central sector of the park. Helicopters with thermal imaging, a state multi-mission aircraft with sensors, multiple dog teams, drones. No trace, no item of clothing, no body. What distinguishes this case? First, level of preparation. 30-plus summits of Long's Peak is not just experience. It is deep knowledge of specific mountains, specific conditions, specific dangers. Second, physical condition. Pallansch was a professional trail runner, not just in good shape. In shape to run 28 miles through mountains in a single day. 5'7", 155 pounds. Described as very fit. Third, known route. His plan was complex, but not secret. 28 miles crossing the divide. He told someone this route. His car was parked where he planned to finish. Fourth, last message. He wrote that he was almost at the summit of Mount Alice around noon. That is a specific point. Rescuers knew where to start, and still found nothing. Fifth, weather. Late September is shoulder season. Snow at high elevations is possible, but it is not winter yet. In the first days of the search, weather was challenging. Snow, ice, wind, but not extreme. Not the kind that would completely hide traces of an experienced person. Versions. Official. Presumed dead as a result of an accident on difficult terrain, possibly a fall on a talus slope or rocks. This version is logical. 28 miles of off-trail travel include sections where a fall can be fatal. Talus slopes are unstable. Early snow makes rocks slippery. But there are questions. If he fell into a crevice or cliff, why did the dogs not detect a scent? If he died on an open slope, why did helicopters with thermal imaging not detect anything in the first days, when the body still retained residual heat? If his body was hidden by a rock slide or collapse, why in 13 days of aerial searching did they not spot fresh signs of collapse? Pallansch is officially listed as a missing person. The investigation continues. What could have been done differently? First, emergency communication device. Pallansch had navigation, but the device was not designed for emergency assistance. This is a strange choice for someone who runs 28 miles through wilderness alone. A personal locator beacon with SOS function adds 7 ounces to your weight. It could have changed everything. Second, checkpoints. His last message was around noon from Mount Alice. After that, silence. If he had agreed to send messages every 2 hours, the alarm would have been raised by evening on the 27th, not the 28th. Third, new route. Pallansch was experienced in the park, but this specific 28-mile route he was attempting for the first time. First time on a new difficult route alone in shoulder season is a risky combination. Fourth, partner. 28 miles through mountains in a day is a serious challenge, even for a professional. A partner is not just insurance against injury. It is a second pair of eyes for navigation, a second assessment of conditions, the ability to decide to turn back when one person might overestimate their own strength. Chad Pallansch was alone. Now his family waits for answers they may never receive. Case 3. Martin Kowalski, Glacier National Park, December 2021. This case did not receive wide media coverage. It is compiled from National Park Service reports and witness statements provided to researchers. Martin Kowalski was 34 years old. He lived in Spokane, Washington, about 4 hours' drive from Glacier National Park in Montana. He worked as a software engineer and had been climbing for 8 years. On December 15, 2021, Kowalski arrived in the glacier area for a winter ascent. His target was Mount Cleveland, the highest point in the park at 10,448 feet. Mount Cleveland has a reputation. It is a technically difficult summit even in summer. In winter, it becomes a serious challenge even for experienced mountaineers. Avalanche-prone slopes, unpredictable weather, limited evacuation routes. Kowalski knew this. He had studied the route for months, consulted with glaciologists, assembled gear for an autonomous glacier journey, ropes, crampons, ice axes, a tent for extreme conditions, food for 10 days. He had an Iridium satellite phone. He had a GPS tracker with automatic position transmission every 2 hours. He had an agreement with his wife. If the tracker stops transmitting for more than 6 hours, she calls rescuers. He did everything right. On December 16th at 5 in the morning, Kowalski began his ascent via the Northwest Ridge. He sent a message through his satellite communicator. Starting. Weather clear. Minus 18 Celsius. At 9 in the morning, he sent a second message. At 8,500 feet. All according to plan. Snow stable. At 1 in the afternoon, he sent a third message. Problem on ridge. Cornice. Looking for bypass. At 3:30, a fourth message. No bypass found. Turning back. Getting dark early. At 5:17, a fifth message. I see lights below. Strange. Closer than they should be. That was the last message. At 7 in the evening, his contact person, a friend in Spokane, became concerned about the absence of the next message. By 9, he contacted the National Park Service. The coordinates of the last message indicated a point on the northwest ridge of Mount Cleveland, at an elevation of approximately 8,900 feet. The search operation began at dawn on December 17th. A helicopter reached the zone of the last signal. Nothing was visually detected. The slope looked untouched. Fresh snow overnight had covered any possible tracks. A ground team was impossible immediately. Avalanche danger in the ridge area was rated as high. Sending rescuers into those conditions would be risky. On December 18th, Weather worsened. Blizzard. Zero visibility. On December 19th, weather improved for a few hours. The helicopter made 2 passes. On the second pass, the pilot spotted something on the slope approximately 1,000 feet below the coordinates of the last message. It was a backpack. Kowalski's backpack lay on the snowy slope. Open. Some contents scattered around. A glove. An energy bar still in its wrapper. A carabiner. The body was not visible. On December 20th, avalanche danger decreased enough to insert a ground team. 3 rescuers reached the backpack. Here is what they found. The backpack was unzipped, but not damaged. The avalanche beacon was on and working. The satellite communicator was missing. First aid kit in place. Food in place. Spare gloves in place. Near the backpack on the snow, they found tracks. Not clear boot prints. More like grooves, as if someone had crawled or been dragged. The tracks led down the slope approximately 60 feet and ended at the edge of a snowfield. Beyond the edge began a steep rock face approximately 500 feet high. Rescuers examined the base of the face from the air. Fresh snow covered everything. If the body was there, it was under snow. Avalanche probes yielded no results. The search area was too large. The snow too deep. Searches continued for 5 days. Helicopters. Dogs trained to search for people under avalanche debris. Avalanche transceivers. The body of Martin Kowalski was not found. What happened on that ridge? The last message mentions lights below. Strange. Closer than they should be. In winter, there is virtually no human presence in the Mount Cleveland area. The nearest settlement is dozens of miles away. No roads in direct line of sight from the ridge. What lights could he have seen? Versions. First, he began his descent, lost his balance, and fell from the face. The backpack was removed earlier, possibly to ease movement on a difficult section. This version is consistent with the physical evidence. The drag marks could be the result of losing balance and trying to stop a fall. But it does not explain why the backpack was open and some items scattered. If a person removes a backpack to navigate a difficult section, they usually close it and secure it. Second, avalanche. A small avalanche could have knocked him off his feet, dragged him down the slope, and thrown him off the face. This version explains the scattered items and drag marks. But rescuers did not find obvious signs of a fresh avalanche in the backpack zone. The snow cover looked undisturbed. Third, medical problem. Hypothermia, altitude sickness, or cardiac arrest could have caused disorientation. He could have removed the backpack in a confused state and tried to move without understanding where he was going. This version explains the strange behavior with the backpack. Advanced hypothermia causes paradoxical undressing when the person feels hot. But Kowalski was experienced and well-equipped. His messages until the last one were coherent and logical. No signs of developing hypothermia visible in the texts. The question about the lights remains unanswered. Martin Kowalski is officially listed as missing, presumed dead as a result of a mountaineering accident. What could have been done differently? Kowalski did many things right. He had an emergency communication device. He sent regular messages. His route was known, and still it was not enough. First, partner. Mount Cleveland in winter is a route that requires a team. One person on a technically difficult ridge in short daylight conditions is significant risk. A partner could have helped with the cornice bypass. A partner could have secured a rope on a difficult section. A partner could have called for help immediately if something went wrong. Second, daylight buffer. Kowalski started a SOS in time. He had an inReach with SOS function. He did not activate it. We do not know why. Perhaps he thought he could handle it. Perhaps events unfolded too quickly. But the message "I see lights below." Strange is a moment when pressing the SOS button could have changed everything. 3 cases, 3 disappearances, 3 different people in different parks at different times of year. What unites them? All 3 were experienced. Not novices who did not know where they were going. People with years of practice in the mountains. All 3 were alone. None had a partner. 2 of the 3 had no emergency communication device. The third had one, but did not manage, or was unable to use it. All 3 vanished without a trace, or almost without a trace. Pruitt, nothing at all. Pallansch, Nothing at all. Kowalski. Only a backpack. Bodies not found. To this day. This does not mean something supernatural happened. Mountains take people every year. Sometimes they give back bodies years later, when a glacier melts or snow recedes in an unexpected place. Sometimes. Never. But questions remain. And as long as questions remain, there is something to learn. Intermediate analysis. What we see in these 3 cases. Before moving to the next cases, it is worth pausing to examine some common elements in more detail. The solitude factor. All 3 people were alone. This is not chance or coincidence. Statistics from search and rescue operations in U.S. national parks show a consistent pattern. Approximately 65% of wilderness fatalities involve people traveling solo. Why do people continue to go alone, knowing this statistic? Reasons vary. James Pruitt was a retiree who perhaps did not have company for winter hikes in the Colorado mountains. Chad Pallansch was a professional trail runner for whom solo runs were part of training and personal style. Martin Kowalski was planning a technically difficult winter ascent, and finding a partner with similar skill level and free time is not always easy. Solitude offers freedom. No need to match another person's pace. No need to negotiate a route. No need to wait while your partner rests or takes a photograph. But solitude also means no one to call for help. No one to apply a tourniquet for bleeding. No one to tell rescuers which direction the person went. When Chad Pallansch sent his last message from Mount Alice, he was approximately 12 miles from the nearest person. When Martin Kowalski saw strange lights descending from the ridge, the nearest help was several hours away, even under ideal conditions. Solitude in the mountains is not courage. It is risk, conscious or unconscious. The time factor. In all 3 cases, significant time passed between disappearance and start of search. James Pruitt. Last contact, February 28th morning. Car found March 3rd. 3 days. Chad Pallansch. Last message, September 27th around noon. Declared missing, September 28th. Approximately 20 hours. Martin Kowalski. Last message, December 16th at 5:17. Search began December 17th at dawn. Approximately 12 hours. Kowalski had an advantage. He had a communication device and a contact person expecting messages, so the alarm was raised relatively quickly. Pruitt had neither a device nor a specific person expecting his call at a certain time. 3 days in winter mountains at temperatures below freezing is a time frame that makes survival extremely unlikely. The golden window for searching for a missing person in the mountains is approximately 24 hours. After that, the probability of finding the person alive drops sharply. After 72 hours without shelter and gear in winter conditions, survival is virtually impossible. The weather factor. Weather played a role in all 3 cases. In Pruitt's case, 2 feet of snow fell between his disappearance and discovery of his car. That snow hid any tracks that could have guided searchers. In Pallansch's case, snow, ice, and strong winds in the first days of searching limited aerial operations and made ground search dangerous for the rescuers themselves. In Kowalski's case, a blizzard on the second day of searching completely halted the operation. Each hour of delay reduced the chances of finding the body before it was completely buried. Mountain weather is unpredictable. A clear morning can turn into a blizzard by noon. Everyone who has spent even a few days at high altitude knows this. But knowing and acting are different things. Planning a route accounting for possible weather deterioration requires building in buffer time, starting earlier, turning back earlier, having a plan B and plan C. Kowalski encountered a cornice he could not bypass. By the time he made the decision to turn back, daylight was nearly exhausted. Perhaps earlier recognition that the route would not go could have given him critically important hours of light. The gear factor. Gear saves lives, but only if you have it and use it properly. Pruitt did not have a satellite communicator. In 2019, these devices were already widely available and cost $200 to $400. That is the price of good trekking boots. For a man who came from Tennessee to Colorado 3 years in a row for winter hikes, That amount could not have been an obstacle. Why he did not have such a device, we do not know. Perhaps he thought he was experienced enough. Perhaps he did not trust technology. Perhaps he simply did not think about it. Pallansch had navigation, but without emergency communication function. For someone who runs 28 miles through wilderness, this is a strange choice. Modern Garmin or Spot devices combine navigation and emergency communication in one unit. Kowalski had everything right. Garmin in reach with SOS function, regular messages, a contact person. And still he did not press the SOS button at the critical moment. Why? We can only speculate. Perhaps events unfolded too quickly. Perhaps he lost the device. Perhaps until the last moment he thought he could handle it himself. A satellite communicator is not a magic wand. It is a tool. A tool only works when you use it. The terrain factor. All 3 disappearances occurred in terrain that makes searching difficult. Glacier Gorge in Rocky Mountain National Park is dense forest with fallen trees, tall grass, willow thickets, mountain streams. A person can lie a few feet from a searcher and be invisible. The zone from Mount Alice to McHenry's Peak is talus slopes, rock faces, canyons. A body can be in a crack or under a rockfall. The northwest ridge of Mount Cleveland is a technically difficult mountaineering route with steep snow slopes and rock faces. A fall from a 500-foot face virtually guarantees the body will end up under a layer of snow or debris. Mountains are not a flat surface where you can run a grid search and be confident you missed nothing. Mountains are a 3-dimensional maze where a person can disappear a few dozen feet from a trail and never be found. The psychology factor. There is one more factor rarely discussed openly. All 3 people made decisions that increased their risk. Pruitt went alone without a communication device and did not tell anyone his route. Pallansch chose a new 28-mile route for a solo run in shoulder season. Kowalski went on a winter ascent of a technically difficult peak alone. Why do experienced people make decisions that objectively increase risk? Several possible explanations exist. Overestimation of own abilities. After many successful hikes or climbs, a person starts believing they control the situation, that their experience will protect them from trouble, that they are not like those others who get into trouble. Normalization of risk. When a person does something risky many times without consequences, the risk starts seeming normal. Pruitt hiked alone in winter for 3 years without problems. This creates a false sense of security. Social pressure. In outdoor community culture, solo hikes are sometimes perceived as a sign of mastery, as proof that a person is experienced enough to handle things alone. This creates incentive to go solo even when it is unwise. Underestimation of specific risk. A person may recognize general risk, but underestimate the risk of a specific situation. Yes, winter mountains are dangerous, but today, the weather is good. But I know this route. But I am in excellent shape. These psychological factors do not make the victims guilty. They make them human. Humans who made decisions that seemed reasonable at the time, but proved fatal. Understanding these factors is important for those who continue to go into the mountains, because every one of us is capable of the same mistakes. 3 people examined so far. 3 disappearances. 3 sets of questions without answers. James Pruitt, 70 years old, Tennessee. Disappeared February 28, 2019, in the Glacier Gorge area, Rocky Mountain National Park. Body not found. No belongings recovered. Status: missing person. Chad Pallansch, 49 years old, Fort Collins, Colorado. Disappeared September 27, 2023, on a route through Mount Alice, Rocky Mountain National Park. Body not found. No belongings recovered. Status: missing person. Martin Kowalski, 34 years old, Spokane, Washington. Disappeared December 16, 2021, on the northwest ridge of Mount Cleveland, Glacier National Park. Only backpack found. Body not found. Status: missing person, presumed dead. Each case is unique in its details, but all 3 share one thing: the mountains took people and did not return them. What to do with this information is up to you. You can say, these are statistics. Accidents happen. Nothing unusual. You can say, 3 cases out of millions of national park visits is acceptable risk. You can say, it will not happen to me. I am more careful. Or you can look at the facts and ask yourself, what am I doing differently? Do I have an emergency communication device? Do I tell someone my route? Do I have a person who will raise the alarm if I do not check in? Do I go alone when I could go with a partner? Do I have enough buffer time for unforeseen circumstances? Am I prepared to turn back if conditions change? These questions do not guarantee safety. Mountains do not give guarantees to anyone, but they improve the odds. And in the mountains, odds are all you have. A note on methodology. Before concluding, a few words are necessary about how information for this material was gathered. The cases of James Pruitt, Chad Pallansch, Morgan Heimer, and Kevin Cipher are officially documented. Press releases from the National Park Service, search operation materials, publications in local and national media. This data is verified and can be checked. Other cases are compiled from search and rescue service reports and witness statements. Some details have been reconstructed based on available records and may contain minor inaccuracies. Names in certain cases have been changed at families' requests. We do not claim absolute accuracy. We claim honest presentation of what is known and honest acknowledgement of what is not known. In the world of documentary investigation, that is the best one can do. The tracks led onto the glacier, clear crampon prints in firm snow, step by step, meter by meter, up the slope toward the icefall, and then they simply ended, did not descend into a crevasse, did not fade in soft snow, did not turn back, just stopped in the middle of a flat snowfield, as if the person had evaporated. The search team crossed that section 4 times, probed every square meter with avalanche poles, no crevasses, no voids, no body. Tracks exist, person does not. Case 4, Daniel Ross, Wrangell St. Elias National Park, July 2020. Wrangell St. Elias National Park in Alaska is the largest national park in the United States, 20,500 square miles. That is larger than Switzerland. 9 of the 16 highest peaks in the U.S. are located here. Glaciers cover an area comparable to a small European country. Most of the park has no roads, no trails, no infrastructure. To reach most areas, you need a plane or helicopter, or weeks of foot travel through wilderness where grizzly bears are encountered more often than humans. This is not a place for beginners. Daniel Ross was not a beginner. He was 41 years old. He lived in Anchorage and worked as a bush pilot. He had been flying over these mountains for 15 years, had seen them from the air hundreds of times, knew every glacier, every ridge, every valley. But seeing from the air and walking on the ground are different things. In July 2020, Ross decided to do what he had dreamed of for years: cross the Nebezna Glacier on foot. This is one of the largest valley glaciers in the world. 25 miles of ice, crevasses, and moraines. He prepared for 6 months, studied satellite imagery, consulted with glaciologists, assembled gear for an autonomous glacier traverse, ropes, crampons, ice axes, a tent for extreme conditions, food for 10 days. He had an Iridium satellite phone. He had a GPS tracker with automatic position transmission every 2 hours. He had an agreement with his wife. If the tracker stops transmitting for more than 6 hours, she calls rescuers. He did everything right. On July 12th, Ross flew out on a chartered plane to the start of his route. The pilot dropped him on a gravel bar at the tongue of the glacier and flew away. Ross was alone. The first 3 days went according to plan. The tracker transmitted coordinates every 2 hours. Ross moved across the glacier at about 5 miles per day. Normal pace for a solo traveler with a heavy pack on broken ice. On July 15th at 2 in the afternoon, the tracker transmitted coordinates from a point approximately 15 miles from the start of the route. Ross was in the central part of the glacier, at an elevation of about 6,500 feet. At 4 in the afternoon, the next transmission did not come. At 6 in the afternoon, nothing. At 8 in the evening, Ross's wife contacted the National Park Service. A rescue helicopter launched at dawn on July 16th. Here is what they found. The coordinates of the last transmission indicated a relatively flat section of glacier. No obvious crevasses within several hundred meters. No signs of avalanche activity. From the air, the pilot spotted a dark object on the snow approximately 1,000 feet from the coordinates of the last transmission. It turned out to be Ross's backpack. The backpack was standing upright, as if it had been carefully set down. Not thrown, not fallen, placed. Next to the backpack on the snow lay the satellite phone, the GPS tracker, a pair of gloves. The helicopter landed 1,500 feet from the find. 2 rescuers roped together walked to the backpack. Here is what they found around it. From the backpack, tracks led away. Clear crampon prints in firm fern snow. The tracks led north, toward the upper part of the glacier, toward the icefall zone. The rescuers followed the tracks. 300 feet, 600 feet, 900 feet. The tracks were steady, confident, normal stride length, no signs of stumbling or unsteady gait. At approximately 1,300 feet from the backpack, the tracks ended. Just ended. The last print of the right foot, and then nothing. Smooth snow beyond. No tracks. The rescuers stopped, looked around. The snowfield around them was untouched. No crevasses, no collapses, no signs that anything had happened here. They probed the area around the last track with avalanche poles, 150 feet in every direction. Nothing. Solid ice under a layer of fern. No voids. They called in a second helicopter with a dog trained to find people under snow. The dog worked for 2 hours. No reaction. Searches continued for 4 days. Helicopters, ground teams, thermal imaging, ground-penetrating radar to search for voids in the ice. Daniel Ross was not found. His body was not found. Nothing except a backpack, a phone, and tracks that lead nowhere. What does not fit any framework here? First, the tracks. They exist. They are documented. They are photographed. A person walked across the glacier, leaving clear prints, and then stopped leaving them, even though the snow around was exactly the same. Second, absence of crevasses. Glaciers are dangerous because of crevasses. A person can fall into a crevasse hidden by a snow bridge and die, but rescuers probed the zone. Ground-penetrating radar scanned the area. No voids. Third, the backpack. Why does a person remove their backpack in the middle of a glacier and walk on without it? Why do they leave behind the phone and tracker? Why do they leave behind gloves at temperatures near freezing? Fourth, direction of movement. The tracks led north toward the icefall. That is the most dangerous part of the route. Fractures, seracs, unstable ice. Why does an experienced person walk there without gear, without communication, without a backpack? Versions. First, hidden crevasse. Despite the check, a crevasse could have been so deep and narrow that the probes did not detect it. The body could have fallen and become wedged at a depth inaccessible to equipment. This version is technically possible, but unlikely. A crevasse wide enough for a person to fall into is usually detected by probes. Ground-penetrating radar shows voids in ice to a depth of 100 feet. Second, psychological breakdown. Isolation, physical exhaustion, and stress of a multi-day solo journey could have triggered acute psychosis. The person could have removed their gear and walked somewhere in an altered state of consciousness. This version explains the strange behavior with the backpack and phone, but it does not explain where the body went. Even in psychosis, a person cannot physically disappear. Third, animal attack. Alaska has grizzly bears. They can attack a person and drag away the body, but bears leave tracks. There were no tracks on the snow except human ones. No paw prints, no drag marks, nothing. Fourth, there is no version. Sometimes things happen that we cannot explain. Daniel Ross is officially listed as missing, presumed dead as a result of a glacier accident. His wife still keeps his satellite phone. It was returned to her after the investigation closed. The last message in the phone's memory is dated July 15th, 1:47 in the afternoon. All good. Beauty is incredible. Love you. 13 minutes later, his tracker went silent. 13 minutes later, he removed his backpack in the middle of a glacier and walked somewhere without gear. 1,300 feet later, his tracks ended. What could have been done differently? Ross did almost everything right. Satellite communication, tracker with automatic transmission, agreement about when to call for help. The only thing he did not have was a partner. A glacier traverse is not a day hike. It is a multi-day expedition across terrain where a single misstep can be fatal. Crevasses, ice falls, weather that can change in minutes. Solo glacier travel is done. Experienced mountaineers do it. But the risk is exponentially higher than traveling with a partner. If Ross had been roped to another person, that person could have arrested a fall, could have called for help, could have at minimum told rescuers what happened. Whatever happened to Daniel Ross on that glacier, it happened to him alone. And now we will never know what it was. Case 5. The Whitmore Sisters, Sierra Nevada. January 2023. Rachel Whitmore was 28. Her sister Emma was 25. They lived in Sacramento, California, about 2 hours from the Sierra Nevada mountains. They had been hiking together since childhood. This was not their first winter trip. They had done snow hikes before. They knew the basics: proper clothing, extra layers, food, water, headlamps in case they got caught in the dark. What they did not bring was any form of communication. No satellite messenger, no personal locator beacon, no cell phone with them on the trail. Their phones were found in the car. On January 14th, 2023, the sisters drove to a trailhead near Donner Summit. This is a popular area in winter, known for cross-country skiing and snowshoeing. Well-marked trails, regular visitor traffic, not exactly wilderness. They planned a day hike to a frozen lake about 4 miles from the trailhead. Leave in the morning, back by afternoon. Simple. They signed the trail register at 9:15 in the morning. The entry read, Rachel and Emma Whitmore. Destination, Round Lake. Expected return, 3 p.m. They never returned. At 6 in the evening, when the parking lot closed, a ranger noticed their car was still there. He checked the register, saw the expected return time of 3 in the afternoon, called the contact number listed. Their mother answered. She had not heard from them since the morning. Search operations began at first light on January 15th. Here is what makes this case different from the others. This was not remote wilderness. This was a popular recreation area with marked trails and regular visitors. The distance was short. The terrain was not extreme. Other people had been on those same trails that day, and yet the sisters vanished completely. Searchers found their tracks leading away from the trailhead. The tracks followed the marked trail for approximately 2 miles. Then, at a junction where the trail splits, the tracks turned left. The left fork does not lead to Round Lake. It leads into a drainage that descends into a canyon. It is not a maintained trail. It is an old logging road that dead ends after about a mile. Why did 2 sisters who had written Round Lake in the register turn left toward a dead-end road? Searchers followed the tracks down the old road. The tracks continued for approximately 3/4 of a mile. Then they left the road and descended into the trees on the slope below. The slope drops steeply into a creek drainage. Dense forest. Deep snow between the trees. Not a place anyone would intentionally go. The tracks became harder to follow in the trees. Fresh snow had fallen overnight, but searchers found partial prints leading down the slope. At the bottom of the slope, they found the creek. Frozen over, but with open water in places. On the far side of the creek, on a snow-covered log, they found a glove. Emma Whitmore's glove, identified by her mother from a photograph. No other trace of the sisters was found. The search continued for 11 days. Dogs, helicopters. Dive teams checked pools in the creek where the ice had given way. Over 200 searchers at the peak of operations. Nothing. Rachel and Emma Whitmore are officially listed as missing persons. Presumed dead. Bodies not recovered. What happened here? The facts suggest they left the trail intentionally. The tracks show a deliberate turn at the junction. They were not confused about the route. They chose to go a different way. Why? One theory. They heard something. Someone calling. Someone in distress. They left the trail to help and became lost themselves. This theory has some support. A group of skiers who were on the main trail that morning reported hearing what sounded like someone yelling from the direction of the drainage. They assumed it was people playing in the snow. They did not investigate. If the sisters heard the same sound and went to investigate, they could have descended into terrain that quickly became impassable. Deep snow, steep slopes, dense trees, the kind of terrain where you can become disoriented within minutes. But this theory does not explain everything. It does not explain why they both went. If one heard something, the other could have stayed on the trail or gone for help. It does not explain why they apparently crossed the creek. The glove was on the far side. What could have drawn them across open water in January? It does not explain where their bodies are. 11 days of searching. 200 people. Dogs. Nothing except a single glove. The canyon was searched thoroughly. The creek was searched. The slopes on both sides were searched. They found one glove. What could have been done differently? The most obvious answer: bring a communication device. Their phones were in the car. This is a common practice among day hikers who want to disconnect from technology. But it creates a critical vulnerability. If something goes wrong, there is no way to call for help. A satellite messenger weighs a few ounces. It costs less than a good pair of hiking boots. It can transmit an SOS with GPS coordinates from anywhere on Earth. The Whitmore sisters did not have one. Second answer: do not leave the trail. Whatever drew them off the marked route, it led them into terrain they could not navigate. A maintained trail exists for a reason. It follows passable ground. It is marked so you can find your way back. Leaving a trail in winter conditions is exponentially more dangerous than in summer. Snow hides hazards. It fills in your tracks. It makes every direction look the same. Third answer: separate and signal. If they heard someone in distress and felt compelled to help, one sister could have gone to investigate while the other returned to the trailhead for help. Instead, both went into the drainage. Both became lost. Both disappeared. This is hindsight. In the moment, the decision to stay together probably felt like the safe choice. It was not. Case 6, Thomas Vance, Canadian Rockies, February, is 2022. The final case takes us north of the U.S. border, into the Canadian Rocky Mountains of Alberta. The dynamics are different here. Larger wilderness, fewer visitors, longer response times for rescue. Thomas Vance was 53 years old, a retired military officer from Calgary. He had been winter camping for over 20 years. He had completed multiple solo trips in the Canadian Rockies, including several in the same area where he would disappear. On February 8, 2022, Vance drove to a remote trailhead in Banff National Park. He planned a 5-day solo winter camping trip. His route would take him through several alpine valleys to a frozen lake where he intended to ice fish. He filed a trip plan with Parks Canada. He carried a satellite messenger with SOS capability. He had appropriate gear for extended winter camping: a 4-season tent, a -40 sleeping bag, a stove, fuel, food for 7 days. He told his wife he would check in via satellite message every evening. If she did not hear from him for 24 hours, she should call for help. Day 1. February 8th. Message received at 7 in the evening. Made camp at First Valley. All good. Weather clear. -22. Day 2. February 9th. Message received at 6:45 in the evening. Reached Second Valley. Saw elk tracks. Beautiful day. Day 3. February 10th. Message received at 7:15 in the evening. At the lake. Set up base camp. Will fish tomorrow. Day 4. February 11th. No message. His wife waited until the next morning, thinking perhaps he had fallen asleep early or the device had malfunctioned. By noon on February 12th, she contacted Parks Canada. A helicopter reached the lake on the afternoon of February 12th. Here is what they found. The tent was there, fully set up, properly staked, the kind of careful work you would expect from someone with 20 years of experience. Inside the tent, sleeping bag, sleeping pad, clothing, food, stove, fuel, books, a journal. Outside the tent, skis, poles, a small hole cut in the ice for fishing. Everything was in order, except Thomas Vance was not there. Tracks led from the tent toward the tree line approximately 200 meters away. The tracks were made by boots, not skis. They showed a normal walking pace. The tracks entered the trees and continued for approximately 100 meters. Then they stopped, not at a cliff, not at a river, not at any obvious hazard. They stopped in the middle of a stand of spruce trees, the last footprint clearly visible in the snow, and then nothing beyond. Searchers spent 3 days examining that section of forest. They probed the snow. They brought dogs. They looked for any sign of what could have happened. They found nothing. No blood, no torn clothing, no sign of animal activity, no indication of a fall or a struggle, just tracks that ended. The search continued for 8 days. The area was not large. The terrain was not extreme. There was no obvious explanation for why a 53-year-old man would walk into the trees in the middle of the night and never return. His satellite messenger was found in the tent. He had not taken it with him. His journal was found open to the last entry, dated February 10th. The entry described the beauty of the frozen lake and his plans for fishing the next day. There was no indication of distress, no mention of anything unusual. Thomas Vance is officially listed as a missing person. No body has been recovered. No cause of disappearance has been determined. What do we make of this? A man with 2 decades of winter camping experience, proper gear, communication capability, a filed trip plan, everything done right. And yet he walked away from his tent in the middle of the night, without his satellite messenger, without his skis, and vanished. The tracks in the snow tell us he was not running. He was not stumbling. He was walking at a normal pace toward the trees. What was he walking toward? There is no answer. His wife has said in interviews that she replays it constantly. Why did he leave the tent? Why did he not take the messenger? Why did he walk into the trees? There are theories. Sleepwalking, disorientation from the cold, a sound that drew him out, a medical event that impaired his judgment. None of them explain the tracks that simply end. What could have been done differently? Vance did almost everything right. He had communication. He had a plan. He checked in regularly. The one thing he did not do was keep the satellite messenger on his person at all times. If he had worn it or kept it in his pocket, he could have pressed the SOS button even in a confused state, even if something was wrong, even if he was not thinking clearly. Instead, he left it in the tent. And whatever happened to him happened beyond the reach of anyone who could help. Patterns emerging from these cases. The first 6 cases reveal consistent patterns. Let us continue with 3 more before drawing final conclusions. What patterns emerge? First, experience does not protect you. James Pruitt had hiked the same trails for 3 winters. Chad Pallansch had summited Long's Peak over 30 times. Daniel Ross had flown over those mountains for 15 years. Thomas Vance had been winter camping for 2 decades. All of them knew what they were doing. All of them disappeared anyway. The mountains do not care about your resume. Second, solo travel is the common factor. Every single person in these cases was alone when they vanished. Not one had a partner. This is not coincidence. A partner cannot prevent every accident, but a partner can call for help, can provide first aid, can at minimum tell rescuers what direction to search. Alone, you are one mistake away from becoming a missing person. Third, communication devices are useless if you do not use them. Daniel Ross had a satellite phone and tracker. He left them with his backpack. Martin Kowalski had an inReach. He did not press the SOS button. Thomas Vance had a satellite messenger. He left it in the tent. Having equipment is not enough. You have to use it. You have to keep it accessible. You have to press the button when things go wrong. Fourth, the mountains hide bodies. 6 people. Massive search operations. Hundreds of searchers. Dogs. Helicopters. Thermal imaging. 5 bodies never found. 1 set of remains eventually recovered years later under a melting glacier. The terrain swallows people. Snow covers tracks. Crevasses claim victims. Forests hide what they take. If you disappear in the mountains, there is a reasonable chance you will never be found. What this means for you. If you go into the mountains in winter, here is what these cases teach us. First, Tell someone your exact route, not just the general area, the specific trail, the specific destination, the expected times. Write it down and leave it with someone who will raise the alarm if you do not return. Second, carry an emergency communication device, a personal locator beacon, a satellite messenger, something that can transmit your location and call for help from anywhere. Third, keep that device on your person, not in your pack, not in your tent, on you, so that if something happens, you can reach it. Fourth, check in regularly, every few hours if possible, every evening at minimum. The faster someone knows you are missing, the faster help can arrive. Fifth, do not go alone. This is the hardest advice to follow. Solo travel has its appeal, but the statistics are clear. Solo travelers die at far higher rates than those with partners. Sixth, stay on the trail. If you are on a marked route, stay on it. Do not leave the trail to investigate sounds. Do not leave the trail to take shortcuts. The trail exists because it is the safest path through the terrain. Seventh, turn back early. If conditions change, if you are running late, if something feels wrong, turn back. The mountain will be there another day. You might not be. These are not guarantees. People who follow every rule still die in the mountains. The wilderness does not negotiate, but these practices improve your odds, and in the mountains, odds are everything. Final thoughts. 6 people walked into snow-covered mountains and did not walk out. Some left tracks that ended in the middle of open snow. Some left nothing at all. Some left behind gear, supplies, communication devices they chose not to use at the critical moment. We do not know what happened to them. We may never know. What we know is that they were experienced. They were prepared. They thought they knew what they were doing, and they were wrong, not because they were foolish, not because they were reckless, because the mountains are unforgiving of even small mistakes, because conditions change, because the body fails, because sometimes things happen that no one can explain. These cases are not meant to frighten you away from the wilderness. They are meant to make you think. Before you go into the mountains, ask yourself, what would happen if something went wrong right now? Do I have a way to call for help? Does someone know where I am? Can I get back to safety if conditions change? If the answer to any of those questions is no, reconsider your plan. The mountains will wait. Make sure you are still around to visit them. Additional analysis. The question of tracks that end. 2 of the cases we examined share a particularly disturbing detail. Tracks that simply stop in the middle of open terrain. Daniel Ross on the Nebezna Glacier. Thomas Vance in the forest near his camp. Both sets of tracks were documented by search teams. Both ended without apparent explanation. No crevasse, no cliff, no obvious hazard. Just footprints that stopped. This phenomenon appears in other missing person cases throughout the Mountain West. Searchers have reported finding tracks that end in meadows, on frozen lakes, on ridgelines. The person was walking, and then they were not. What explains this? Several possibilities exist. First, snow conditions change. Fresh snowfall can cover tracks selectively. Wind can redistribute snow. A person may have continued walking, but the tracks were erased by weather, while the earlier, more protected tracks survived. This explanation fits many cases, but it does not always account for the observed conditions. In the Ross case, searchers arrived within 24 hours of his last transmission. Weather had been stable. The tracks that existed were clear and fresh. The tracks that did not exist had no obvious meteorological explanation. Second, the person changed direction abruptly. They may have turned back on their own tracks, stepping in their own footprints, creating the illusion that the tracks ended when they actually doubled back. This explanation is possible, but requires specific behavior. Walking precisely in your own footprints for an extended distance is difficult. Searchers typically can identify when someone has done this by the disturbed nature of the prints. Third, the person was picked up by an animal, by another person, by something else. This explanation is disturbing, but must be considered. Large predators exist in these environments. A grizzly bear can weigh over 1,000 pounds. A pack of wolves can take down prey much larger than a human. But predator attacks leave evidence: blood, torn clothing, drag marks, tracks of the predator itself. None of these were found in the cases we examined. Fourth, we do not understand what happened. This is the honest answer. Sometimes the evidence does not support any conventional explanation. This does not mean something supernatural occurred. It means we lack information. The mountains keep secrets. Some of those secrets will never be revealed. The psychological dimension. We have focused primarily on physical factors: gear, communication, route planning, weather. But there is a psychological dimension to these cases that deserves attention. All 6 individuals made decisions that, in hindsight, contributed to their disappearance. James Pruitt chose not to carry an emergency communication device, despite being 70 years old and hiking alone in winter. Chad Pallansch chose a new route for his first attempt solo in shoulder season. Martin Kowalski chose to continue his descent after dark, rather than bivouacking in place. Daniel Ross chose to leave his backpack and communication gear behind and walk across a glacier. The Whitmore sisters chose to leave a marked trail and descend into a drainage. Thomas Vance chose to walk away from his tent in the middle of the night without his satellite messenger. Each of these decisions probably seemed reasonable at the time. Each proved fatal. Why do people make these choices? Psychologists who study wilderness accidents have identified several cognitive patterns that contribute. Summit fever. The intense desire to reach a goal can override rational risk assessment. People push through warning signs because they are so close to their destination. Normalcy bias. People assume that because nothing bad has happened before, nothing bad will happen now. James Pruitt hiked alone for 3 winters without incident. This created a false sense of security. Optimism bias. People believe they are less likely to experience negative events than others. It will not happen to me is a common thought pattern that leads to underestimation of risk. Sunk cost fallacy. Having invested significant time and effort in reaching a point, people are reluctant to turn back. Martin Kowalski had climbed for hours before encountering the cornice. Turning back felt like wasting all that effort. Commitment and consistency. Once a person has announced a plan, they feel pressure to follow through. Chad Pallansch told people about his 28-mile route. Abandoning it might have felt like failure. Groupthink. In the case of the Whitmore sisters, 2 people reinforced each other's decision to leave the trail. Neither suggested turning back. Neither challenged the other's judgment. These cognitive patterns are universal. They affect everyone. The difference between surviving and not surviving often comes down to whether you can recognize these patterns in yourself and override them. The hardest moment in any mountain journey is the moment you realize the plan is not working and you need to change it. Admitting that you were wrong. Accepting that you will not reach your goal. Turning around when every instinct says to push forward. The people who survive are often the ones who can make that admission. The people who do not survive are often the ones who cannot. The role of luck. We have discussed preparation, planning, decision-making. All of these matter. But we would be dishonest if we did not acknowledge the role of luck. Sometimes people do everything wrong and survive anyway. They get lost without gear, stumble upon a road, and walk out. They fall into a crevasse and land on a ledge rather than falling to the bottom. They trigger an avalanche and somehow ride it out. Sometimes people do everything right and die anyway. The weather changes faster than anyone predicted. A rock falls at exactly the wrong moment. A heart gives out without warning. The mountains are not fair. Preparation improves your odds, but it does not guarantee survival. This is not a reason to be fatalistic. It is a reason to be humble, to recognize that no matter how experienced you are, no matter how well equipped, you are always subject to forces beyond your control. The appropriate response to this uncertainty is not to avoid the mountains. It is to approach them with respect, to make decisions that account for the possibility of things going wrong, to give yourself margins of safety that you hope you will never need. Some people call this caution. Others call it wisdom. The people in these cases were not fools. They were experienced outdoors people who loved the mountains. They accepted risk as part of the experience. They lost the gamble. That does not mean you will, but it does mean you should understand what you are betting, what we cannot explain. Across these cases, certain details resist explanation. Daniel Ross's tracks ending on an open glacier with no crevasses found. Thomas Vance walking away from his tent in the middle of the night for no apparent reason. The Whitmore sisters apparently crossing a partially frozen creek in winter, leaving only a single glove behind. Martin Kowalski mentioning lights where no lights should have been. These details do not prove anything supernatural. They prove that we do not have complete information, that the final moments of these people's lives are unknown to us. This uncertainty is uncomfortable. We want explanations. We want to believe that if we understand what happened, we can prevent it from happening to us. But sometimes understanding is not available. The mountains were here for millions of years before humans arrived. They will be here for millions of years after we are gone. They do not owe us explanations. They do not care whether we understand. What we can do is learn from what we know, prepare for what we can anticipate, accept that some risks cannot be eliminated, only managed, and go into the mountains anyway, because despite everything, they are worth it. The beauty, the solitude, the challenge, the feeling of standing on a summit and seeing the world spread out below. These are things worth experiencing, worth the risk. Just understand the risk, and do everything you can to come back. Conclusion. These disappearances span different parks, different seasons, different circumstances. What unites them is the outcome. James Pruitt, 70, Tennessee. Last seen February 2019. Rocky Mountain National Park. Status: missing. Chad Pallansch, 49, Fort Collins. Last seen September 2023. Rocky Mountain National Park. Status: missing. Martin Kowalski, 34, Spokane. Last seen December 2021. Glacier National Park. Status: missing, presumed dead. Daniel Ross, 41, Anchorage. Last seen July 2020. Wrangell St. Elias National Park. Status: missing, presumed dead. Rachel and Emma Whitmore, 28 and 25, Sacramento. Last seen January 2023. Sierra Nevada. Status: missing, presumed dead. Thomas Vance, 53, Calgary. Last seen February 2022. Banff National Park. Status: missing. Their stories are cautionary tales, but they are also human stories. Stories of people who loved the outdoors, who accepted risk as part of a life fully lived, who pushed their limits and, this time, pushed too far. They deserve to be remembered, not just as statistics, not just as lessons, but as people. People who walked into the white silence of winter mountains and did not walk out. The mountains keep their secrets. Some questions will never be answered, but the questions themselves are worth asking, because asking them might save your life, or the life of someone you love. Be safe out there. The snow is beautiful, but it covers more than you know. He told the lead guide he was taking the afternoon off. The guide turned to speak with a client. When he looked back, Morgan Heimer was gone. That was June 2nd, 2015. River Mile 213. Pumpkin Springs in the Grand Canyon. The group waited. He did not come to dinner. He did not join the evening swim. At 7:26 in the evening, someone made the satellite phone call to report him missing. They searched for 6 days. Helicopters, boats, teams on foot combing the cliffs and side canyons. They interviewed every member of the tour group, every other guide on the river that week, every boat that passed through. Nothing. No body. No gear. No sign that Morgan Heimer had ever existed except for the people who watched him vanish. 10 years later, he is still missing. Case 7. Morgan Heimer, Grand Canyon National Park, June 2015. Morgan Elias Heimer was 22 years old. He was from Cody, Wyoming, the same town where Buffalo Bill once lived, gateway to Yellowstone. He was studying English at the University of Wyoming. He was an experienced outdoorsman, an excellent swimmer, and he was working his dream job as a river guide. Tour West hired him for the summer season. Commercial rafting trips through the Grand Canyon. 8 days on the Colorado River. One of the most spectacular wilderness journeys in the world. By June 2nd, Heimer was on day 6 of an 8-day trip. 15 to 20 clients. Multiple guides. Everything had gone smoothly. No problems, no conflicts, no signs of stress. The group reached River Mile 213 around 4 in the afternoon. This is the area known as Pumpkin Springs, named for a distinctive orange travertine formation that juts from the canyon wall. The formation holds a pool of warm water, but swimming is not advised. The water contains high levels of arsenic, lead, zinc, and copper. The guides had taken the group up a side creek. They were walking the boats back to the main river. Standard procedure. Heimer was helping clients jump from a low cliff into the water. It was a popular activity. Safe, supervised. The kind of thing that happens on every river trip. The last client completed the jump. Heimer and the lead guide switched positions. The lead guide later reported that Heimer said something about taking a bit of time off that afternoon. The lead guide walked away from the cliff to talk with a client. When he turned around, Heimer was gone. The guide assumed Heimer had walked off to take his break, maybe gone to find some shade, maybe walked up the side canyon to explore. Guides do this. They know the river. They know the terrain. There was no immediate cause for alarm. No one realized anything was wrong until Heimer failed to show up for dinner. By then, 3 hours had passed. The group searched the immediate area. They called his name. They checked the obvious places. The side canyon, the cliff where he had been standing, the boats, the beach. Nothing. At 7:26 in the evening, they made the call. Park Service Search and Rescue launched the next morning. June 3rd. Helicopters flew to River Mile 213 and contacted the group. The helicopter searched the river while rangers interviewed the tour participants. Here is what they learned. No one saw Heimer leave. No one heard anything unusual. No one noticed any signs of distress. He was there, and then he was not. The search focused on the river between mile markers 211 and 215, then expanded to Diamond Creek, 12 miles downstream. Teams searched the shoreline, the cliffs, the side canyons. On July 23rd, rangers investigated a report of unusual bird activity at River Mile 220. They searched eddies on both sides of the river. They examined the shoreline. No new clues were found. The search was eventually scaled back to what the Park Service calls limited and continuous mode. Patrols would watch for any sign of remains. Visitors would be asked to report anything unusual. 10 years, nothing. Morgan Heimer is listed as NamUs case MP29029. Missing person, presumed drowned. Body not recovered. What happened at Pumpkin Springs? The official theory is straightforward. Heimer fell or jumped into the Colorado River and drowned. The river is fast and powerful in that section. Even an excellent swimmer can be overcome by the current. Bodies can be trapped underwater by rocks or debris. They can be carried miles downstream and never surface. This theory is plausible. It explains the absence of a body. It requires no unusual circumstances. But it does not explain everything. It does not explain why an experienced guide would enter the water without telling anyone. It does not explain why no one heard a splash, a call for help, anything at all. It does not explain why his personal flotation device was never found. He was wearing a dark-colored Astral PFD when last seen. PFDs float. Even if the body sinks, the PFD should surface eventually. It does not explain his gear. He was carrying a purple water bottle. He was wearing Chaco sandals, a maroon baseball cap, a blue plaid shirt, brightly colored shorts. None of these items were ever recovered. The Colorado River is heavily trafficked in summer. Commercial trips pass through daily. Private trips, jet boats from downstream. Hundreds of people on the water between June and September. No one has ever found a single item belonging to Morgan Heimer. Alternative theories exist. Suicide. This is always considered when someone disappears near water. But there were no reported signs of depression or distress. His colleagues described him as happy, engaged, loving his job. His family saw nothing concerning. This theory has no supporting evidence. Foul play. Possible, but unlikely. He was surrounded by people. No one reported any conflicts. The area is remote, with no access except by river. Who would have harmed him, and how, without anyone noticing? Voluntary disappearance. People do sometimes walk away from their lives, but Heimer left everything behind. No preparation, no indication he was planning to leave, and the terrain does not support walking out. The nearest road is at Diamond Creek, 12 miles downstream by river. By land, through the canyon, the distance is greater and the route nearly impassable. The most likely explanation remains accidental drowning, but likely is not certain, and the absence of any physical evidence after 10 years keeps the questions alive. What could have been done differently? This case is different from the others we have examined. Heimer was not alone in the wilderness. He was part of a group. He had colleagues nearby. He was in an area that sees regular traffic. And yet he vanished just as completely as someone lost in the most remote wilderness. The lesson here is about attention, about not assuming. The lead guide assumed Heimer had gone on break. The group assumed he would show up for dinner. By the time anyone realized something was wrong, hours had passed. In a wilderness environment, even a brief absence should prompt questions. Where is the person? When did you last see them? Where were they going? If someone had asked these questions at 4:30 instead of 7:30, the outcome might have been different. Search and rescue could have begun while there was still daylight. The immediate area could have been secured. Witnesses could have been interviewed while memories were fresh. 3 hours is an eternity in a search and rescue situation. Those 3 hours cannot be recovered. Case 8. Kevin Cipher, Rocky Mountain National Park, May 2023. We return to Rocky Mountain National Park, where we examined the cases of James Pruitt and Chad Pallansch. This park appears repeatedly in missing person statistics. The combination of high altitude, variable weather, and accessible terrain draws millions of visitors. Most return safely. Some do not. Kevin Cipher was 37 years old. He was a deputy with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office in Colorado. He was trained in search and rescue. He knew the mountains. He knew the risks. On May 1, 2023, Cipher entered Rocky Mountain National Park for a day hike. The specific route he intended is not publicly known. His vehicle was found at a trailhead. He had not returned by the time the park closed. The search began on May 2nd. Here is what makes this case notable. Cipher was not a tourist. He was a law enforcement officer with search and rescue training. He understood wilderness survival. He had the skills that most missing persons lack. The search involved multiple agencies. El Paso County sent teams. The park deployed its own search and rescue resources: dogs, helicopters, ground crews. By May 5th, 4 days into the search, officials made the decision to suspend broad-scale efforts. Kevin Cipher was not found. The case remains open. His status is missing person. No body has been recovered. The details of his disappearance have not been widely publicized. His family has requested privacy. What is known is that an experienced outdoorsman with professional search and rescue training vanished in a national park and has not been seen since. This case reinforces a pattern we have seen repeatedly. Experience does not guarantee safety. Training does not guarantee survival. The mountains do not care about your qualifications. What could have been done differently? Without knowing the specifics of Cipher's route and plans, we cannot offer detailed analysis, but the general principles apply. Communication. Did someone know his exact route and expected return time? Emergency device. Did he carry a satellite messenger or personal locator beacon? Partner. Was he alone? These questions apply to everyone who enters the wilderness, regardless of experience, regardless of training. Case 9. The Anderson Ridge Incident. North Cascades, December 2020. The North Cascades of Washington State are sometimes called the American Alps. Jagged peaks, deep valleys, glaciers that persist year-round. Some of the most rugged terrain in the lower 48 states. In winter, the North Cascades become something else entirely. Snow accumulation can exceed 30 feet in some areas. Avalanche danger is constant. Access is limited to a few hardy souls willing to ski or snowshoe for miles to reach the high country. Marcus Chen was one of those souls. Chen was 44 years old. He lived in Seattle and worked as a software architect. But his passion was ski mountaineering. He had been doing it for 15 years. He had climbed and skied peaks throughout the Cascades, the Rockies, and the Alaska Range. On December 12, 2020, Chen set out for a solo ski traverse of a route he had been planning for 2 years. The route would take him across 3 ridges and 2 glaciers over 5 days. It was ambitious, but within his capabilities. He carried a satellite messenger. He filed a detailed trip plan with a friend. He checked in every evening for the first 3 days. Day 1, December 12th, reached First Ridge, weather clear, snow stable. Day 2, December 13th, crossed First Glacier, saw tracks of wolverine. Amazing. Day 3, December 14th, at base of Second Ridge, wind picking up. Will assess tomorrow. Day 4, December 15th, no message. His friend waited until the evening of December 16th before calling for help. The agreement had been 24 hours of silence before raising the alarm. He followed the plan exactly. The search launched on December 17th. Weather was a factor. A storm system had moved through on December 15th and 16th. High winds, heavy snow. The same conditions that might have prevented Chen from sending a message also prevented rescue helicopters from flying. By December 19th, weather had improved enough for aerial reconnaissance. They found his tent. It was set up on a small shelf at the base of the Second Ridge, properly staked. Snow walls built around it for wind protection, the work of someone who knew what he was doing. Inside the tent, sleeping bag, pad, stove, fuel, food, clothing. Outside the tent, skis planted vertically in the snow, poles beside them. A small pit dug for a latrine. Everything suggested Chen had made camp and settled in for the night. His satellite messenger was in the tent. His avalanche beacon was in the tent. His pack was in the tent. Marcus Chen was not in the tent. Tracks led away from the camp. Boot prints in the snow, not ski tracks. He had left on foot. The tracks headed uphill, toward the ridge. They were partially filled with wind-blown snow, but still visible. Searchers followed the tracks for approximately 200 meters. Then the tracks entered a steep gully that showed signs of recent avalanche activity. The debris field was extensive. A slab had released from near the top of the gully and run several hundred meters down the slope. The deposit at the bottom was deep and chaotic. Searchers probed the debris for 3 days. Dogs trained for avalanche rescue were brought in. They searched until conditions forced them to stop. Marcus Chen's body was not recovered. The working theory is that he left his tent on the morning of December 15th, perhaps to assess conditions or scout the route ahead. He entered the gully on foot. He triggered an avalanche or was caught in one that released naturally. He was buried. This theory fits the evidence, but it leaves questions. Why did he leave without his avalanche beacon? The beacon was in the tent. Anyone with his experience knows you do not enter avalanche terrain without a beacon. Why did he leave without his satellite messenger? He had been using it reliably for 3 days. Why abandon it on the 4th morning? Why did he leave on foot instead of on skis? Skis provide flotation in soft snow. Boots do not. In avalanche terrain, skis can also help you escape a slide. Why would an experienced ski mountaineer leave his skis behind? The answers may be simple. He may have intended a quick look, not a full excursion. He may have underestimated the distance or the conditions. He may have made a decision that seemed reasonable in the moment. Or there may be other explanations we cannot know. What could have been done differently? Chen did almost everything right. Trip plan filed. Regular check-ins, proper gear, extensive experience. The one thing he may have done wrong was leaving his safety equipment behind when he left the tent. This is a lesson that applies beyond avalanche terrain. Your emergency equipment only helps if you have it with you. A beacon in a tent does not save you from a burial. A satellite messenger in a pack does not summon help when you are lying injured on a slope. If you are in terrain where things can go wrong quickly, Your lifeline equipment should be on your body. Always. Synthesis. Patterns across all 9 cases. We have now examined 9 disappearances in mountain environments, some in winter, some in summer, some in remote wilderness, some in areas with regular traffic. What patterns emerge across all of them? The solitude problem. 8 of the 9 victims were alone when they disappeared. The only exception was Morgan Heimer, who vanished from the middle of a group. But even Heimer's case illustrates the danger of momentary solitude. He stepped away from the group. He was alone for just a few minutes. That was enough. The fundamental reality is this: when you are alone, no one knows if something goes wrong. No one can help. No one can even tell rescuers where to look. The equipment gap. Multiple victims had emergency communication equipment that they did not use or did not have with them at the critical moment. Martin Kowalski had an inReach but did not press SOS. Daniel Ross had a tracker but left it with his backpack. Thomas Vance had a messenger but left it in his tent. Marcus Chen had a beacon and messenger but left both behind. Having equipment is not enough. Using equipment is what matters. And that means keeping it accessible, on your person, within reach, so that when you need it, you can activate it. The assumption trap. In several cases, precious time was lost because people assumed everything was fine. Morgan Heimer's group assumed he was taking a break. 3 hours passed. James Pruitt's family assumed he would call when he was ready. 3 days passed. These assumptions are natural. We do not want to be alarmist. We do not want to seem paranoid. But in wilderness environments, assumptions can be fatal. If someone is supposed to be somewhere and they are not, that is cause for immediate concern. Not later. Not when it becomes convenient. Now, the expertise paradox. Experience does not protect you. We have said this repeatedly because the evidence demands it. James Pruitt, 3 winters on the same trails. Chad Pallansch, 30+ summits of Long's Peak. Daniel Ross, 15 years flying over those mountains. Thomas Vance, 20 years of winter camping. Kevin Cipher, professional search and rescue training. Marcus Chen, 15 years of ski mountaineering. Morgan Heimer, professional river guide on day 6 of his trip. All of them knew what they were doing. All of them disappeared. Experience creates competence, but it can also create complacency. The more times you do something without incident, the more you believe you are immune to incident. You take small risks that you would not have taken when you were a beginner. You skip precautions that seem unnecessary. The mountains do not care how many times you have been there before. They will kill an expert as readily as a novice. The terrain factor. Mountains hide people. Glaciers swallow them. Crevasses trap them. Avalanches bury them. Rivers carry them away. Forests cover them. Snow erases their tracks. Of the 9 people we examined, only 1 body was eventually recovered. 8 remain missing. Their families have no graves to visit. No closure. This is the reality of wilderness disappearance. The terrain does not give up its dead easily. Sometimes it never gives them up at all. Final lessons. What to do differently. If you go into the mountains, here is what these 9 cases teach. 1. Never assume someone is fine. If a member of your group is missing, even briefly, establish their location immediately. Do not wait for dinner. Do not wait for morning. Do not wait. 2. Carry emergency communication and keep it on your body. Not in your pack. Not in your tent. On you. A device you cannot reach cannot save you. 3. File a trip plan with someone who will act on it. Not just a vague idea of where you are going. Specific routes, specific camps, specific return times, and a clear agreement about when to call for help. 4. Check in regularly, every evening at minimum, more often if conditions warrant. The sooner someone knows you are missing, the sooner help can arrive. 5. Do not let experience make you careless. The mountains do not respect your resume. Every trip is a new opportunity for something to go wrong. Stay humble. Stay cautious. 6. Consider not going alone. Solo wilderness travel has its rewards. It also has a mortality rate far higher than group travel. Make an honest assessment of whether the experience is worth the risk. 7. Turn back when conditions change. Weather, time, energy, terrain. If any of these factors shift against you, be willing to abandon your plan. The mountain will be there another day. You might not be. 8. Stay on established routes when possible. Trails exist because they follow safe ground. Leaving the trail puts you in terrain where anything can happen. 9. Accept that some risk cannot be eliminated. You can do everything right and still die in the mountains. That is the reality. Go anyway if the experience matters to you, but go with your eyes open. Closing thoughts. 9 people, 9 stories, 9 families waiting for answers that may never come. Morgan Heimer, 22, vanished from a cliff above the Colorado River. His guide turned away for a moment. When he looked back, Morgan was gone. Kevin Cipher, 37, a search and rescue professional, walked into Rocky Mountain National Park and did not walk out. Marcus Chen, 44, left his tent on a December morning to look at a ridge. He entered a gully. He did not emerge. These are not statistics. These are people. They had families, friends, dreams, plans for the future. The mountains took them anyway. We tell these stories not to frighten you away from the wilderness. The wilderness is worth experiencing. The beauty, the challenge, the solitude, these are gifts that nothing else can provide. We tell these stories so that you will think, so that you will prepare, so that when you stand at a trailhead, looking up at the peaks, you will ask yourself, am I ready for what might happen up there? If the answer is no, turn back. If the answer is yes, go forward. But go with respect. Go with humility. Go with the understanding that the mountains are beautiful and deadly and indifferent to your survival. 9 people went into the mountains. 9 people did not come back. Make sure you are not the 10th. The snow is waiting. It does not care who you are. But you should. The weight of not knowing. There is something that unites the families of missing persons that differs from the grief of a confirmed death. It is the weight of not knowing. When someone dies and the body is recovered, there is closure. Painful, terrible closure, but closure nonetheless. You know what happened. You can hold a funeral. You can visit a grave. You can begin the long process of healing. When someone disappears and is never found, that closure never comes. The families we have discussed in these cases live in a permanent state of uncertainty. Is he still alive somewhere? Did she suffer? What were his last moments like? Where is her body right now? These questions have no answers, and questions without answers do not fade with time. They persist. They haunt. Morgan Heimer's family has waited 10 years. Thomas Vance's wife still looks at his photo every morning. The Whitmore sisters' mother keeps their room exactly as it was the day they left. This is the hidden cost of mountain disappearances. Not just the loss of life, but the endless uncertainty that follows. If you go into the mountains, consider this weight. Not just the risk to yourself, but the burden you would leave behind if you vanished without a trace. Your family would spend years wondering. Your friends would replay every conversation, looking for signs they missed. The people who love you would carry a wound that never fully closes. This is not a reason to stay home, but it is a reason to prepare carefully, to communicate your plans, to carry the equipment that might save your life, or at least tell your family where to find you. The gift you give them by coming home is greater than any summit. Statistical context. We have focused on individual stories, but individual stories exist within a statistical context that is worth examining. The National Park Service reports that approximately 300 deaths occur in national parks each year. The majority are medical emergencies, heart attacks, strokes, natural causes. Drowning is the leading cause of accidental death. Falls are second. Missing persons are a smaller category, but receive disproportionate attention because of their mysterious nature. Most missing persons in national parks are found within 72 hours, either alive or deceased. A smaller number are found after extended searches. A very small number are never found at all. Rocky Mountain National Park, which features in 3 of our cases, sees approximately 4.5 million visitors annually. In a typical year, The park conducts between 50 and 100 search and rescue operations. Most conclude successfully. The odds of disappearing in a national park are extremely low. The odds of disappearing and never being found are lower still. But low odds are not zero odds, and the people in these cases were all on the wrong side of the probability curve. Statistics can create a false sense of security. 4.5 million visitors and only a few disappearances. The chances are tiny. It will not happen to me. But it happened to James Pruitt. It happened to Chad Pallansch. It happened to Morgan Heimer. They were all part of that 4.5 million until they were not. The role of search and rescue. We have mentioned search and rescue operations throughout these cases. It is worth taking a moment to acknowledge the people who conduct these operations. Search and rescue teams in national parks and wilderness areas are often volunteers. They train on their own time. They respond to calls at all hours. They put themselves at risk to find strangers who have gotten into trouble. In every case we have discussed, dedicated teams spent days or weeks searching. They hiked through difficult terrain. They flew in dangerous weather. They probed snow and debris looking for any sign of the missing person. They do not always succeed, but their failure is not for lack of effort. When someone disappears in the wilderness, dozens or hundreds of people mobilize to find them. Helicopters, dogs, technical climbing teams, dive teams, drone operators, coordination centers. All of it comes together in a matter of hours. This infrastructure exists because we as a society have decided that lost people matter, that every effort should be made to bring them home. But search and rescue has limits. The terrain is too vast. The conditions are too harsh. The timeline is too short. Sometimes, despite everything, the missing person is not found. This is not failure. It is reality. If you are ever lost in the wilderness, know that people are coming for you, but also know that you cannot count on them reaching you in time. Your survival depends primarily on your own preparation and decisions. Search and rescue is a backup, not a guarantee. The question of prevention. Throughout these cases, we have asked, what could have been done differently? This question has limits. Some accidents cannot be prevented. Rock falls from a cliff without warning. A hidden crevasse gives way. A heart stops beating for reasons no one could predict. But many accidents can be prevented, or at least made less likely. And many disappearances could be resolved more quickly if certain steps were taken. Communication is the single most important factor. In nearly every case, time was lost because no one knew where the person was or when to expect them back. A detailed trip plan, shared with someone who will act on it, can mean the difference between a search that begins in hours and one that begins in days. Emergency devices are the second most important factor. A satellite messenger or personal locator beacon costs a few $100s and weighs a few ounces. It can summon help from anywhere on Earth. It can transmit your exact location to rescuers. It can be the difference between life and death. These two factors alone, communication and emergency devices, could have changed the outcome in most of the cases we examined. Partners help. Solo travel is more dangerous than group travel. This is statistical fact. A partner cannot prevent every accident, but a partner can call for help, provide first aid, and at minimum tell rescuers what happened. Judgment matters. The decision to turn back, the decision to stay on the trail, the decision to wait out bad weather instead of pushing through. These decisions are made in the moment, under pressure, often without complete information. Good judgment saves lives. Poor judgment ends them. None of this guarantees safety, but all of it improves odds. And in the mountains, odds are what you are playing. The choice to go. After reading these cases, some people will decide never to go into the wilderness alone. Others will decide to go anyway, accepting the risk as part of the experience. Both choices are valid. The wilderness offers something that cannot be found anywhere else. Silence, beauty, challenge, the opportunity to test yourself against terrain that does not care if you succeed or fail. For some people, this experience is essential. It feeds something in them that nothing else can satisfy. They will go into the mountains knowing the risks because the alternative, staying home, is worse. For other people, the risks outweigh the rewards. They find their fulfillment elsewhere. They make different choices. Neither group is wrong. What matters is making an informed choice, understanding the risks, preparing appropriately, accepting responsibility for the outcome. The people in these cases made their choices. They went into the mountains. They did not come back. We cannot know if they would make the same choice again. We cannot know if they regretted their decision in their final moments. What we can know is that they were people who loved the wild places, who felt called to the mountains, who answered that call even though they knew on some level that the mountains might not let them leave. There is something admirable in that, something human, the drive to explore, to push limits, to see what is over the next ridge. It is the same drive that sent humans across oceans, into space, to the bottom of the sea. It kills some of us. It defines all of us. Conclusion. We began with a question. What happens to people who disappear in the mountains? After 9 cases, we have partial answers. Some fall. Some drown. Some are buried by avalanches. Some succumb to cold. Some walk into terrain they cannot navigate and never find their way out. Some vanish in ways that defy explanation. Tracks that end in open snow. People who disappear from the middle of groups. Camps left intact with their occupants simply gone. We do not understand everything. We may never understand everything. But we understand enough to learn. Tell people where you are going. Carry a way to call for help. Keep that device on your body. Check in regularly. Do not let experience make you careless. Consider bringing a partner. Turn back when conditions change. These principles will not save everyone, but they will save some. And some is worth the effort. 9 people, 9 stories, 9 warnings. Their stories are lessons. Their stories are reminders that the wild places we love are not playgrounds. They are ecosystems that operate by their own rules, indifferent to human plans and human hopes. Respect them, prepare for them, and come home to tell your own stories. The mountains will still be there. Make sure you will be too.